pretty shocking to see the volume of health conditions people don't even know they have. I actually fell into this field by way of a cancer diagnosis when I was a young woman. And I'm an 18-year breast cancer survivor now, and it threw me into fertility preservation and facing all the challenges of insurance coverage for something that I felt was medically necessary, that my doctors felt was medically necessary before I underwent cancer treatment. I did co-author the first fertility preservation bill in the country, and it failed for 8 years. But eventually we did succeed in getting insurance coverage in the state of California, and then our bill became model legislation in other states in America.
Alice Crisci was 31 when a breast cancer diagnosis gave her 5 days to make a decision about her fertility, and an insurance company that said no. She went into $80,000 of medical and then turned that crisis into her life's work. She started an onco-fertility nonprofit 3 weeks into treatment, published a book days before her double mastectomy, and co-authored the first fertility preservation insurance bill in the country. Today, she's a co-founder and CEO of Ovum Health, a virtual fertility platform that fills the diagnostic gap between OBGYNs and IVF clinics. Ovum diagnoses, on average, 4 conditions that were previously missed, takes both Medicaid and commercial insurance, and has built a trust engine of 67,000 plus users through its Fertility Answers app. She's also the proud mom of Dante, her fertility preservation miracle. Alice, welcome to Reclaim. I'm so glad to have you here. This episode of Reclaim is brought to you by Future Digital. At Future, we partner with the next generation of category-defining health brands to scale through paid media, lifecycle marketing, and performance creative. If you're building a women's health or family brand, and you're looking for a growth partner who knows your category, visit Scale with Future to start the conversation. Now, let's get into it. Alice, welcome to Reclaim. I'm really excited to have you on, both from Carrie, who had, mentioned and connected us, and then just even from our pre-online conversation and just kind of where we want to go. So thank you so much for taking time today.
Thank you, Destiny, for doing this.
So let's start with your origin and the birthing. And one of the things that I personally love about the women's health creation, and we talked about the founder's journey, is that a lot of this comes from lived experience. And I think that it would be worthwhile for our listeners to hear how this got started and what really drove the birthing, for lack of a better word, and the vision behind Ovum Health.
Yeah, using the word birthing is funny in my field since I'm in reproductive medicine.
Yes.
I actually fell into this field by way of a cancer diagnosis when I was a young woman. And I'm an 18-year breast cancer survivor now, and it threw me into fertility preservation and facing all the challenges of insurance coverage for something that I felt was medically necessary, that my doctors felt was medically necessary before I underwent cancer treatment. So out of anger for that situation, I decided to take action and started advocating for insurance coverage. So literally when I walked out of the fertility clinic, I turned to my friend who was at the appointment and I said, "We're going to start a charity." And I started it that weekend.
Wow.
And before I even went through surgery, we had raised money, held an event. I published my first book. I catalyzed a network of reduced fee egg freezing specialists to help solve the problem of access. And unfortunately, in healthcare, we have no shortage of problems to solve. So if you're a natural problem solver and you're a startup person and you're like, well, I can start a new company and I can start this, you just go and do it. And it gave me purpose and it gave me passion. It was a project to help me recover from cancer. I had no idea that I would have to go through treatment for 3 years at the time. So I sort of thought, oh, I'm going to start this organization and, I'm going to get better and then I'll still have my regular life. And that didn't happen. My regular life was running a company at the time. And when I went through cancer, we had the unexpected 2008 economic crash. So I was out of work while going through cancer treatment and trying to start this nonprofit. But I did co-author the first fertility preservation bill in the country. and it failed for 8 years, as bills tend to do. They tend to fail for a very long time before they succeed, but eventually we did succeed in getting insurance coverage in the state of California, and then our bill became model legislation in other states in America. So the origin was really my own crisis. My son, who is now 12, was conceived 18 years ago from that one fertility preservation round. So I had very true lived experience in both dealing with a health crisis, needing to protect my fertility, and then needing to use my frozen embryos through IVF to complete my family.
Yeah, that's an incredible story from your son to the first preservation bill in the country, and for you having the resilience while you're going through all of that to see it through.
I think the resilience, okay, I can claim that I'm resilient now. I think that was just pure unadulterated adrenaline in dealing with a crisis. I really think so.
Yeah, wow. So walk us through how from that lived experience and your own crisis, how that led to Ovum Health and how you started to map out the
Sure.
model and through wanting to create more access.
Yeah, so out of that experience with my oncofertility charity and getting to know the market, getting to know the providers, these really ethical care providers who in some cases were doing pro bono egg freezing for us. It was also the age where digital health started to come on scene but was very new. And I didn't really see anyone bringing digital health apps to the market beyond period trackers. And I would get on these Facebook groups, and I would support women, and I would turn around in the middle of the day and text one of these doctors that I knew a question that came up in these channels and these forums, and I would get an answer within 15 minutes. And I thought, everything shouldn't be flowing through me to get these strangers that I don't even know an answer to a health question. We wanted to get them off of Google. We wanted to get them out of giving each other bad medical advice. And it just was one of those seeds that planted, and all of a sudden an app formed in my mind, and we called it Fertility Answers, and we organized a an angel group of doctors to fund the build of this platform where they themselves were able to answer those questions whenever they were available. So we launched this app on iOS and Android all the way back in 2017. Long, long time ago now. And it was incredibly successful because it was the first platform that gave people access to a trusted environment where they could ask an actual medical professional a question. It's not medical advice, but it is getting the content from the right source at the right time. We collected a lot of health data along the way. And that platform, we tested a lot of different business models. And unfortunately, most of them in reproductive medicine were what I would consider sluggish in the sense that there were great things that we were doing, clinical trial recruitment being one of them, data insight projects being another, that in other areas of healthcare would have commanded 10 times more revenue than what we were able to command in our field. So the app was amazing. We gathered all the data that we needed to analyze the market, and we realized something really significant. Less than 50% of professionals were referring their patients into an IVF clinic after they had already been diagnosed with infertility for at least 3 years. So you have low referrals, which we saw that happening in oncofertility too, but even more so, these people didn't want to go into the IVF clinic. They didn't want that to be the answer. So there was no trusted source for them to go somewhere to get a full workup, to get to the root cause of what was in the way of them achieving their dream of family. And we had that aha of, wow, we need something that sits between the OB-GYNs and the PCPs and the IVF doctors to give people an immediate path forward. And that's really why we started Ovum Health. We are the first, and I don't know if we're the only still, but we were the first, I think, in a virtual environment to provide lifestyle medicine solutions pre pregnancy to both men and women. So we've been able to reverse chronic conditions that are in the way of having a successful, healthy family and prevent high risk outcomes like gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, and recurrent pregnancy loss.
Wow. Okay. So A lot to unpack there. So, with Fertility Answers and the app, initially, how were you driving adoption and how are you growing that? And then did you keep the app model once you started Ovum Health's iteration today? Or I guess walk
Yeah.
us through that pathway a
Yeah,
little
that's a
bit.
great
Yeah.
question. Well, that was also at the height of direct to consumer advertising on
Yes.
really on all the digital channels, but Facebook in particular and Instagram. So the strategy that we took, we were very efficient marketers and we did a lot of edutainment. So
Mm,
we would run Instagram live events with our experts from the app
mm,
and interview them and allow the public to ask public questions. So we had like the publicly available questions in Instagram lives that helped us create a ton of video content very quickly. And then we would have the private question environment within the app. That allowed us to have 22-second to long form video based edutainment distributed digitally through YouTube, Facebook, etc. So we could acquire our user base for $1 back then. And
incredible.
yeah, it was nuts. I mean, it was
Yeah.
great. We scooped up, tens of thousands of users quite efficiently. Those days with privacy regulations and with changes in pixel tracking and everything else are behind us, unfortunately. The digital platforms have made it a lot more difficult to acquire rapid users in the app world. That said, there's also a lot more opportunity out there from Reddit to TikTok. Our mission is still let's meet the patient where they are because that's where they're turning, right? To consume their media, to consume their education. And when we started Ovum Health, that was ultimately the mission is we've already warmed them up and are a trusted source for them. We were already successful in connecting people who needed support in the platform itself. And we have a transaction underway to be able to continue doing that. Ovum itself took the model of we need to be in as many insurance networks as possible. So we went broad. We licensed ourselves in 20 states, scooped up a couple hundred insurance contracts. We have contracts with payers you've never even heard of. And that was so that every time, you have a friend and you say, "Oh, you should go talk to Ovum," we would hope to be a network in the state that you have your friend. And it is in healthcare, it is a lot more costly experience having to go direct to consumer to let everybody know we're a network, but we are a network for about 70 million reproductive age Americans. And the big growth opportunity though is that we're now partnering with IVF clinics to give them a new revenue stream. We're the lifestyle medicine provider for them so that we reduce that barrier, that fear barrier that patients have where they're like, I don't want to go to an IVF clinic. I don't want to be sold IVF. Great. You don't have to be. There's lots of solutions before IVF has to be the answer. So we did pivot our business model to reduce our burn on direct to consumer marketing and partner with these amazing ethical IVF clinics so we could provide them with a new revenue stream and we are the service provider.
And by partnering with clinics and having that trust credibility, do you find that you still need to build awareness to the consumer to understand the solution even when they are consulting with their provider? Or I'm
Yes.
wondering what that looks like.
Yes, and broad edutainment-based brand awareness campaigns are a lot more affordable than a conversion campaign.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
even with as efficient of the marketers that we are, we offer everyone a free consult to start, no matter what. So whether that's in a direct to consumer channel or that's through our clinical partners, we offer a free consult. That's really important because our care model is requires commitment. On average, patients are spending 6 months with us, and it's usually the couple, the man and the woman, or the woman and woman, or the man and the man, because we're talking about cellular health of both parties. So when it comes to create an embryo, it's life's most precious cells, the sperm and the egg. And so the cellular health of both sources are really incredibly important to the health of the embryo. And with all the money that's been dumped into longevity medicine, you would think that we would pay more attention to the cellular health of, a woman's largest cell in the body being an oocyte, and the man's cells as well. And we don't. We haven't historically spent any time investing in that level of healthcare. And there's inflammation, chronic illness. There's so many things in the way of someone's kind of baseline cellular health as it is, toxicity in the environment, bad access to water, overuse of plastics and that are already in the way. So it's kind of a double whammy of, okay, well, you've got this natural propensity for these chronic illnesses plus kind of a toxic environment. Let's clean it all up. And that's why it takes a bit of a commitment. So we do weekly visits with our patients and a lot of in between support, tech enabled support for an average of about 6 months to help them really get their lifelong health on track.
And are you, in terms of the delivery and working with the patient every week, is this training the OBs and the providers or practitioners at the fertility clinics, or are you also inserting and providing some of your own?
We provide the entire care team. So
Wow. Wow.
in the
Okay.
world, PCPs, they are trained in chronic illness, but they're not trained in fertility.
Correct.
OB-GYNs are trained to prevent pregnancy and deliver babies, but they're not trained in chronic illness or in fertility diagnostics or fertility optimization. And then IVF clinics, of course, are very well trained in fertility optimization as it relates to IUIs and IVF procedures. So what we've done is we've upskilled everyone in lifestyle medicine. So we take OB-GYNs, we take nurse practitioners, PAs, and we also work with RDNs. And so everyone is upskilled in the Ovum Health lifestyle medicine clinical approach. And that takes time as well to invest in that training. There is an Academy of Lifestyle Medicine that we invest in certifying our providers in, but it's our internal training and our own care models and care protocols that has enabled our ability to do this so successfully.
I see. And how do you maintain the rigor and the quality? So I guess I've got two questions coming in from both sides. Are you now offering services beyond 20 states, and are you scaling on that side? And then how are you maintaining the rigor and the quality of care delivery?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's such a great question. So, with our model, we have a mentorship model internally so that as you transition into kind of operating autonomously as a care provider at Ovum, you've got a mentor who's part of your care team. They're the person who can check in on your chart. You can collaborate with them. Every single week, we meet with our entire clinical care team. So they're doing journal reviews, they're talking about cases, they're staying current on the research, they're reviewing clinical protocols, etc. So it's just a very collaborative model. I think that that's a really important component to what we do. And it's working, it's effective. On the side of scalability, what I learned the hard way is you don't have to be in all 50 states to scale, and in fact, it's actually made it harder to scale by being in so many states, because each state in the United States has a different set of regulations for literally everything related to healthcare. So we are taking the approach now of, yes, we have this broad licensure, coverage across the 20 states, but we're taking the approach of going deep now in each state. So we started with Illinois. That's where we partner with IVF clinics in the state of Illinois. We're going after employers to partner with them because we directly reduce the cost of healthcare, because our total cost of care is so much lower than in the natural environment when women are getting pregnant, maybe after years of struggle, maybe with some medicated help, but they're having these high risk pregnancies that cost on average $40,000. That's a
Right.
premium that we don't need to be paying for in the United States because we can prevent that. So we are carving out an area of prevention that hasn't had any focus before.
Yeah. And what percentage of, I guess, really, what percentage of the patients or cases coming to you are successfully addressed through prevention versus whereas it just wasn't addressed at all previously?
Oh my gosh. That's the way that I thought you were going in a different direction with that question,
Okay.
and I was like,
Okay,
"Oh,"
but
I was about to say, like, "Oh, about 60%." But the harsh reality is people are coming to us after struggling for 3 years.
mm,
They've already had all these conditions that are not being treated in the way that they were hoping it would be treated.
I see.
And the other trend that we notice is that people are like shopping for the right provider to do the things that they want to do. So by the time they get to us, they're like, oh my gosh, because we're addressing 8 areas of their life: movement, nutrition, restorative sleep, good habit creation, bad habit cessation. We're even going into stress management by offering mental health support services. And also, we're talking about replacing the toxicity of the products in the home and doing the cellular health supplements that are really required that don't exist in a pharmaceutical pill. So there are people out there who wish it was a, give me a pill and I'll be fine. I get that does, have a lot of people who wish that there was that simple, but it's not. We're talking about creating healthy habits, and we do this thing called habit stacking, where you can't do everything all at once. I can't give you this overhaul for your life and expect you to go implement it on your own. Olympic athletes didn't become Olympic athletes by, like, doing it on their own. So our care model really is carefully curated so that people can make these micro changes week by week that stack so that they can actually get off the medications for hypertension. They have met the weight goal. Women are ovulating on their own, in some cases for the first time in their entire adult life. Truly. Men's methylation levels have gone down and they've got great sperm parameters now. So there's so many incredible success stories. So for the patients that find us, we have found that they've been underdiagnosed and undertreated for many
Wow.
years.
Okay.
So that's
Got
why
it.
the way that I thought you were going with the question, I was going to answer differently. I'm like, well, I think it's 100%. I mean, by the time they get to us, 100%, but uh, typically almost two-thirds of people can achieve success on their own
Okay.
if their tubes are open, they're not facing age-related infertility, there's no polyps or fibroids in their uterus in the way, and that men's, semen parameters are, can actually successfully achieve a medically or unassisted pregnancy. I don't love the word natural because there's nothing unnatural about IVF.
Right.
But with as little medical intervention as possible. I mean, sometimes it still helps with these complex metabolic cases to use medications to support the fertility cycle itself.
Yeah.
But for those, 4 to 6 months, we're really cleaning up their health and wellness. It's just extraordinary success.
Wow. And is that success, sorry if this is obvious because now you got me hooked here. Is the success then tied to some cases still moving into IVF and some cases not? Or what does
Yeah.
that look?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yes.
mean, and that is absolutely the case. And I would say it's about 60-40. I mean, 40% of the time there's still something else going on that does require IVF to be the best fit. And certainly age-related infertility on top of the chronic conditions is going to be first and foremost.
Of course.
We are always ethical and supportive of those cases. But this is why the IVF doctors are partnering with us. They those ethical docs out there, they do not mind that patients can avoid IVF. And that's why we've created our model so they get top line revenue, and we are the service provider for that revenue. We're the fulfillment arm of that revenue. And I think that's a really important consideration. In my case, I needed to get ready for that IVF cycle, but my eggs remaining were assumed to be obliterated by chemo and medical menopause and all the other treatment I went through. So it was very appropriate for me to still use my frozen embryos, but I did need to go through a lifestyle overhaul and certainly like a significant volume of detoxing before I even used my frozen embryos and did a transfer. So there's all kinds of scenarios and reasons that IVF is still absolutely the most appropriate treatment for many, many people. And we would just encourage anyone before they're going to do an egg retrieval to make sure that they're improving the health of those eggs for as long as possible, because it actually takes 6 months for the eggs that you retrieve 6 months from today, you're impacting them right now. So it's not a quick process. With men, it's a lot faster. They have more efficient bodies. It's unfair, but it's just the way it goes.
I wish and want this level of awareness and understanding in terms of all the different factors that really go into creating our health, right? To either carry a baby with our eggs or some other pathway.
Exactly.
And I think what you're saying is just so important and so needed, or like a need to know.
That's also why we are strong advocates against waiting for 12 months of struggle before you go in to see someone. If
Mhm.
this is the year that someone wants to have a baby, we want them to get an Ovum Health checkup first. There is
Yeah.
no need to go through that stress.
Yeah. Love
It
that.
is
Love that.
pretty shocking to see the volume of health conditions people don't even know they have.
Oh my god. I believe that.
Yes,
Unfortunately, I do believe that.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so all of that, the earlier that we start, then the faster everyone can achieve their dreams in a healthier situation. And that, like, isn't that the ultimate goal? You don't just want the baby in your arm, you want the healthy baby in your arms.
Yes. Yes. Healthy baby, healthy you.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Before we go into more of your personal founder's journey, the marketing mind in me just wants to understand the current state of funnels. So, do
Yeah,
you have organic and paid traffic for brand awareness and that
yeah.
funnels into app usage with which then creates trust? Or are you relying much more heavily on your partnerships and the trust that's already built through the centers and the OBGYNs? Like, I'm curious what the
That's such
current
a great
state looks
question.
like. Yes.
As a marketer myself, it's omni-channel, right?
Okay.
So I'm
Sure.
relying on building trust everywhere that we can build trust or leverage trust that already exists, because I think that that's part of the brokenness of the US healthcare system right now is there is so much distrust. So creating the trusting relationship is why we invest in free consults. But I will tell you, in a direct to consumer environment, you book free consults and then you have a huge no show rate because the trust wasn't there in the first place. And they're thinking, oh, I don't even know if it's real. I'm going to blow this off. Those that show up, we have 84% conversion rates into the program. So
From
if they show
from
up
cold
to a free
traffic.
consult, just from
Okay.
cold traffic, if
Wow.
you show
Wow.
up to a free consult, we build the trust because the nursing team that does a free consult is absolutely amazing. And then they actually start the program. And because we have such broad coverage with insurance, we also learn the hard way if they themselves know that they're already in network or that we are in network with their insurance, they're they're 2 times more likely to show up to the free consult. So we have a lot of data on that as well. So like all things marketing related, we did a lot of experimentation to figure out what's going to work in that arena. The partnership approach, it's extraordinarily different how fast the conversions happen when it's a physician, a trusted physician referral into the program.
That
It's
makes sense.
unbelievable. It's like I am stunned actually.
Yeah. Wow. And so which channels are you using to feed on the consumer side, even if it's more of a pure brand awareness play? Is it the usual channels, Meta, TikTok, Google, or are
Yeah.
there any other channels that were surprising along the way?
Yeah, one of our nurses started doing some TikToks because her husband's filming them for her. 'Cause I don't wanna do TikTok. I don't wanna do any social media. So yes,
Oh my
it's all the standard places still, and we do participate in those boards and forums still and the groups and pipe in and answer questions. So, we do have brand ambassadors that still participate in all the different places. But we are more invested in the B2B, referral mechanisms now because it's just the payoff is there.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Something occurred to me before we go into your founder's journey is I'm wondering how long users are using the app. So I guess really two questions. Is the app a free or paid
Mhm.
version after a
Free.
while?
Yeah, it's
Free.
all
And so
free.
how long are they using the app? And I'm wondering what percentage of users turn into a patient.
Yeah, that's such a great question. So, what we've noticed is that in the first week of becoming a new user, the average number of questions people ask is about 3. And so once the questions are answered, we've already matched them to a variety of different solutions that they can go into. So we might recommend a product as a for instance, based on the questions that they ask, based on their health profile, we might recommend a product, like an at-home ovulation kit type situation. We might recommend if we find out they have PCOS, we might recommend a different product. And then of course we match them to the clinic if we're in a state that can serve them in that clinic. And, that's the constraint of not being in all 50 states. So part of the mistake that I made in thinking I have to be in all 50 states and I got, accumulated 20 licenses, those are really expensive to maintain. And as somebody who came from that app world thinking the most efficient way for me to market in the app is just broadly, all 50 states. But that, as an early stage healthcare startup, is was not a viable path forward. We are at our pre-seed stage of funding, so on very limited funds. It did not make sense for us to go direct to consumer advertising in the app. We're really relying on a lot of word of mouth referrals still from, those who were already app users, because it is not very efficient to just only target Texas in the app world. It's a lot faster to just, get, and the reality is people call us all the time just from us being in the insurance directory. A lot of them
Mm.
are calling for pap smears, which I can't do, in a virtual environment yet.
Not yet, not yet.
Wherever. Yeah. But you do get some exposure, just by
Yes.
being in the directory.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Coming back to your founder's journey, and we were just kind of talking about this before, before we went online, but you've been a multiple time founder now, and
Yes.
I'm
Got the gray hair to prove it.
yeah. And so I guess I've got a couple of curiosities. There's one, having stumbled onto creating Ovum Health accidentally, or maybe it was just from a pure pull to do so. Do you believe that being a founder, this is your life's work, or is this still part of a greater picture? Because being a founder, it takes its own wiring. It requires a certain level of conviction and mission. And, as we were saying, there are easier paths.
Insanity. It takes a level
So it's like, what's
of
what's your
undiagnosed
take?
neurodiversity. Yes, it does all the things.
Yeah.
I mean, I think even to be a founder, when you the first time that you're a founder, if you don't have a certain level of naivety, you would never do it.
Yeah.
So there has to be a level of brazen courage coupled with just enough naivety to say yes and move
Sure.
forward.
Yes. That's right. That's right. From
So
there, from there, how does one, what's your take on how one deciphers this is my life's work, this is what I'm meant to do, or maybe it's a part of their process because
yeah.
it is a wild journey.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I think there was I have been a founder in like a variety of instances. So I would say there's a difference in being an entrepreneur
Yeah.
than being a founder. So I had already been an entrepreneur most of my life. And all of the other companies that I started were all service companies. And I kept saying to myself, like, this is exhausting, right? Like just service companies. Like the next one I do, I'm going to be a tech enabled service company. And then when I got cancer and I started looking at all these opportunities in the market, it's a very creative time in my life, ironically. And as a natural born problem solver, who I had to kind of reinvent myself because I felt that my executive functioning was so obliterated from cancer treatment that that my former career and my former self had died. That person no longer existed. And so at first I was just figuring out how was I going to earn a living again. I had gone from being truly at the top of my game at 30, living between my little beach house, my first house I ever bought in Redondo Beach, California, and a corporate apartment in New York, and going back and forth and being like, my life is grand, to, all of a sudden everything blowing up in smoke from a health crisis. And then, of course, the '08 crash happened, and I didn't even have my work anymore. So there was a reinvention that already had to happen, and I had to learn new ways of using this version of my brain that is different than it was. Not because of age. And anyone who tried to tell me, I was like, give me a break. I had 3 years of cancer treatment. It is not age related at 35. It is simply, I had a lot of treatment. and so I think that there was some introspection there, and a calling. I do feel that cancer was a blessing, that it led me to this field that I could make a difference in. And I am very hungry for knowledge. And even with Ovum, I didn't want to be kind of reliant on outside sources to figure out the insurance payer relationships and figure out claims and billing and all of that. And so I took it in house and I said, no, I need to learn these payers from the inside out. So I think that there's a natural desire for me to constantly be growing and learning, and coupled with kind of the problem solving, coupled with feeling that this was my calling where I wanted to make a difference in the world, where I felt very suited to be making a difference in the world. It is the thing probably that continues to fuel me. But at the end of the day, there are so many headwinds when you're a founder. And what I mean about like entrepreneur versus founder.
I was just gonna ask.
Yes. Right? So when you
Yeah.
say you're a founder, I mean, you're really talking about becoming a venture-backed founder.
Sure.
And that is its own beast of all things. And I had helped in my career in my 20s, I helped lots and lots of people raise capital. I'd done a lot of decks, I had done a lot of talks, done a lot of strategic planning, and helped hundreds of millions of dollars be raised during my consulting career. So I just felt like, well, I can do it. Again, a little bit of naivety. Not not really getting the volume of pitches that you have to do and the volume of no's and the volume of just things that you don't know what you don't know. And I think I certainly didn't know what made a good investor and a bad investor. I didn't know the difference between sophisticated investor and unsophisticated investor. And I'm in a group of entrepreneurs that we co-mentor each other once a month. And a couple of months ago, we were all, oh, just really thinking through, like, wouldn't it be so great just to own a car wash? We could make it the best car wash ever, but we could be earning like $300,000 a year in our own little car wash with no investors, or a laundromat. I mean, there are so many other ways to earn a living that are far easier, far less stressful of a path forward than the path that a founder takes. So we it's good to have yourself surrounded by people who get it, because it is an arduous path forward for certain.
And so I'm wondering, in your view, what is it that makes it worth it?
Gosh,
Before we
it's
talk about
such
what's next.
I know. The baby I mean, in my world, the baby's being born makes it worth it.
Okay. Yeah.
Gosh, when I get, the newborn photo from a patient that we directly helped, when I'm like, "That's an ovum baby."
Yeah.
It's absolutely unbelievable, to have people we have one patient who's so amazing at social, and so she posts and she's like, "My before and my after with ovum." Those moments are incredible.
Yeah.
When I get the list of claims that I successfully processed and got paid, by insurance companies, I'm like, "Oh, I did it." You know?
Yeah. Mhm. Yes,
Uh,
okay.
yeah, I think, that in is ultimate fulfillment. One thing that really drives me, and this will make me kind of feel a little bit emotional, is the 2 people that I partnered with who create all the clinical protocols and do all the research and, really have rolled up their sleeves to create the Ovum Health model is a doctor named Dr. Jacobs and a doctor named Dr. Kirby Plessala. And the 2 gentlemen, I feel that this is their legacy,
Mm,
and I'm very motivated to be the steward of their legacy.
wow.
So I think that founders have intrinsic values that sometimes they can't articulate.
Yeah.
And for me, it's being of service in an area where we really see transformational change. And it's very, very, very deeply fulfilling to know that we're creating truly the next generation of healthy children.
Yeah.
And I have this very deep seated commitment to just being the steward of their legacy, knowing
Mhm.
that long after they're done practicing medicine, the OVA model and their models can live on.
Mm, I love that, and I appreciate that so much. So, let's talk about what's next, right? We've just been talking about building and
Funding.
creation. and things are, ebbing and flowing. So
Yeah.
what's next for you? What's next
Yeah.
for Ovum Health?
So what's next? So Ovum is doing its pre-seed round of funding. The older you get, the more I think responsible you are with capital. There's some natural maturations that have happened since I first raised capital all the way back in 2017 versus raising capital now and how we deploy the capital. So we have been incredibly shrewd with how we spend the money that we raise. So we did a very tiny angel round under $1 million in 2024. And now that it's 2026, we are looking at closing our pre seed this spring slash early summer. So by the end of, yeah, it's very exciting.
Very exciting. Yes.
Yes, we have incredible partners at the table to back us. And this focus on the B2B relationships is really important because of that trust that we talked about. Is that by the time someone gets into a clinic, they have a trusted relationship and we can come in and help create just this really healthy path forward. So we're looking at expanding that footprint in strategic states. We are looking at partnering with employers as well
Okay.
because
Right.
we do directly save self-insured employers tens of thousands of dollars per pregnancy. So this is also a very exciting opportunity for us. And so we're starting with that in Illinois. We're expanding into North Carolina, where I will be relocating to HQ of the company. So we're headed to Raleigh, North Carolina for that. And then we'll continue to fulfill, our patients in the other 18 states that we're in.
Wow, fantastic. And the goal is to, from what you shared, is to not expand the state access, correct? Where you're sticking with the 20 states?
Well, do I wanna be in all 50 states? Of course, because I want to be as accessible as humanly possible. I mean, 2 words that come up in Ovum's day-to-day with our executive team is access and ethics. We wanna be the most ethical healthcare provider in the United States, and we also want to make sure that we're accessible to as many people as possible. So we do take Medicaid, we do take commercial insurance. We are partnering with self-insured employers so that we can, go direct to the employers as well. So yes, there is a mission. However, capital needs have to dictate how we get there and when. So we have a very sound, I think, approach to walking and not sprinting at the expense of patient quality.
Right.
And I think that's a really tricky scenario when you're venture backed because a lot of venture capitalists want you to grow top line revenue at all costs. And the reality in healthcare is there's hundreds of millions of dollars available to generate if you're just one geography. It doesn't require the revenue doesn't require us to be in all 50 states, but there's a capital expense of being in all 50 states with licensure alone that becomes very costly. So I don't have a good answer for you on when we'll be in all 50 states, but I also kind of let the patients dictate which state we're going into next. So when there is an employer who needs us to be in, the Northeast and gobble up all the Northeastern states, we will do it, you know?
Mm, that's a good answer. Yeah.
So employers call.
Yeah, I love that. I it's very practical.
I think you have to
Um,
be. I mean, the more, yeah, the longer you've been a founder, the more practical I think that you become because I think that was my naivety in 2017, 2018. I raised way too big of a round back then, and I raised it through the wrong security vehicle. And it ended up putting a ton of debt on my balance sheet, and I hadn't thought through that. So I think just, the mistakes help you mature and become practical in ways that help you create a sustainable business. Everybody talks about scalability. It's like, well, that's all well and good, but what we're really talking about is actually just building a business that you can continue to grow and run profitably so
that's
that
right.
everybody gets to earn a living. That's the
Mm,
important part is that it's a sustainable approach.
yeah. And actually, before we wrap up with our last thought around reclaim, which is what this podcast is called, we had briefly touched on inflection points, and I wanted to
Mm,
see if there was insights or learnings around your key inflection points during this founder journey as you're building Ovum Health that would be worthwhile to share, especially we've got other health founders listening
yeah.
in as well.
So when you're fundraising, you're only ever focused on the positive inflection points.
Okay.
When I get to this big milestone and that big milestone, it's incredibly unrealistic. I mean, it is monumentally unrealistic.
Yeah.
And then, and then you attract all this money and then, there's an oh shit moment of like, wait a minute, I'm meeting my first challenge. And the challenging inflection points are the ones to talk about with your board before they happen, to talk about with your mentors and your advisors before they happen. Because if you don't have a frame of decision making, if you don't have a value system of the lens that you're going to approach it, and I'll give you some case in points. So 2020, everybody, the whole world was impacted by the pandemic. We had no idea when the pandemic hit how it was going to impact our own little pockets of the world. And a lot of businesses shut down during that time. Did they know in advance that they were going to shut down during that time? Probably not. But the pandemic gives us, I think, a really important lens to talk about. What if there was another pandemic? What if there was some other catastrophic reason? War, health, economy. What are those headwinds that actually are insurmountable? Since the pandemic, I've watched probably no fewer than 100 companies just close. And nobody ever talked about that in 2017 and 2018. Everybody was only talking about funding rounds and funding rounds and funding rounds and funding rounds. And nobody ever talked about, like, well, what are the inflection points that would have you just close a company or file chapter 7 or chapter 11 or an ABC, you know, or, you know, what happens when you are not in the position to do a big exit? Can you do a little one to pay your investors back? And what are those exits even look like? What would be the catalyst to say, hey guys, we better start looking at exiting now? So we had a failed M&A in 2020. So this felt like such an exciting Hail Mary because it was the middle of pandemic and we thought, oh, this is great. We didn't expect to, exit 2 years after basically closing our little seed round. We were very excited by that. It turned into a strategic investment that never funded. And that headwind alone, I've watched dozens of companies who met that same scenario just close their doors. And that happened to us in 2020, at the end of 2020, 17 days before I had to make payroll. And then I found out in 2021, by March of 2021, that the funding wasn't going to happen at all. For most founders, that is a catastrophic moment. And I wasn't ready to walk away. And I don't know that my stubbornness was my stubbornness was definitely not in the best interest of me or my family. I took my role as protecting shareholder value so incredibly seriously that I sacrificed years to find a path forward.
Wow.
And I think that founders need to have the right board around them to have that hard conversation, which is, this is not going to be easy. What happens the first time that you're sued? That happened to me too. When a bad actor sues you and you have your first lawsuit and you feel like, oh, like you feel like the world is ending. But how do you respond to that? I think the thing nobody ever talks about is how many different lawyers you need around you and how expensive that is on the balance sheet and the P&L. I mean, my goodness, I didn't even know there were so many subspecialties of lawyering. You know? I mean, you don't know that until you get into it because you think you only ever need your contracts attorney and that's it. And it's like, nope, you need the HR attorney and you need your litigation attorney and you need your IP attorney and you need, you need so many attorneys.
Well, what I'm also hearing is that during that point, you made the decision to keep moving forward no matter what. And you also really had the trust in yourself to say, I'm going to keep going and I'm going to figure out a path forward. And you did. That's
Yeah,
that's
I
kind of
did
also
find a
what I'm
path
hearing back.
forward. I
Yeah.
did find a path
Wow.
forward, but I didn't always have the support for the path forward. And I
Mm,
think that goes back to learning kind of lessons the hard way about being clear on the people that you want around you.
yeah.
Because everyone gets to like talk about inflection points where, they've got no runway, they've got no money in the bank, they have no idea where they're going to, like how they're going to pay their electric bill. And
Yeah.
so you take whatever capital's in front of you and nothing could be worse than that. And I have been in that moment, where I'm
Yeah.
like, no, whatever the baggage is that's coming with this check, we'll be able to deal with it. And I think that
Mhm.
was such an egomaniacal thought that I hope I have obliterated, because the hardship that has come from taking the wrong investors a few times,
Mm,
despite having the majority of the investors be amazing,
yeah.
it has been painful for my mental health. It has been very painful for my stress level, and it's really, I think there are things that it's cost the company that you can't even really see from, like, it's that whole above the iceberg, below the iceberg type thing. It's like the below the iceberg things are momentum, camaraderie, motivation, those moments when you're still hanging on and you haven't earned a living for literally years from your startup. How are you going to keep the lights on? And I think that stubbornness that I talk about, there's drawbacks to it, certainly. And I think that that's why it's really, I think founders really don't understand the level of governance that they should have, not just to protect them and insulate them, but to help them make very sound decisions. So the founder I am today versus the founder I was in 2017 and 2018, like, my eyes are so wide open about governance itself and why that matters. And even though the whole investor world talks about 99% of startups fail, when you're in that moment of like, okay, am I actually making this prolonging the failure, or is the end game still going to be, the same, and this is just like, you know, suffering for no reason, or is there light at the end of the tunnel? And I think having people around you who can say to you, it's time to pull the plug, or it's time to move on and we got you, you know, um, I think those things really matter, and like you really get to know who you are. You really get to know who you are in the moments. They talk about it from an integrity of like who you are is the person you are when nobody's watching. And I think your founders are very tested on every level, every level.
Well said. So well said. And I love your governance piece as well, because you're right, from what I've witnessed, from what I've seen, that is just so important. Well, this podcast is called Reclaim. And while this question may seem so obvious for what you are building and creating and delivering at Ovum, what are you helping your patients reclaim? And what have you reclaimed for yourself in the process?
I feel like that's an Oprah question that's gonna get me
Yes,
crying.
it
Good
is. It
job,
is.
Destiny. I mean, certainly with our patients, we're helping them reclaim their health
Yeah.
and reclaim their dream of family. That is the biggest honor of our lives, is
Mhm.
getting to catalyze that, facilitate that. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Um, for me, I think I'm through the process, I'm reclaiming my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Mm.
I'm turning 50 this year, and I think entering the best decade of my life.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
And there was a moment when I was 31 and dealing with cancer, I I think I stopped picturing what I was going to look like at 50, because I
Mm.
wasn't really sure I was going to get there.
Yeah.
And I signed up for a lot of hardship over the last decade. And I think now, in this next iteration of my founder journey and my founder story, it is reclaiming my life.
Mm. Wow. Mm. You're going to make me tear up. I've got goosebumps from your story.
You got me all
Well,
choked
thank you.
up.
Thank you, Alice, for sharing so openly and so wholeheartedly. And I can't wait for our listeners to be able to tap in and to be able to connect with us.
Well, I hope they don't need therapy after mine.
Oh, my goodness.
But if they do, Venture Backed Moms Group is amazing.
Okay.
Pando pooling is amazing. We have founder support circles for anybody who does need it. There's a lot of
Oh my,
opportunity for them.
oh my goodness. Well, thank you. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
really.
Destiny, for doing this.
One more thing. Reclaim reaches founders, operators, and investors, building the future of health and wellness. If your brand wants to be in front of this audience, sponsorship slots are opening up. Reach out at support@scalewithfuture.com. The link is in the show notes.